it was always clear. I just didn't like what I was seeing, right? It was clear that I was like to release this life that I had constructed there. And I felt devastated by it because I didn't want to, because it was comfortable and beautiful and gorgeous. And again, it was such a clear message. Your new life is going to cost you your old one. It can be hard in the midst of so much violence, oppression, and despair to believe in a just, loving, and compassionate world. I'm also clear that if ever we need a collective hold of that possibility, it is now. Mundane Miracles with Sonya Renee Taylor is a podcast where I share stories, reflections, anecdotes, and epiphanies from my daily existence in an effort to collect evidence that life is truly loving and kind, full of intention, guiding us all toward greater love, grace, and compassion, proving that if we learn to look and listen, we will hear and see that life is indeed unfolding for our highest good. Join me as I share evidence that life is happening on purpose with radical love in service of our highest good, even when it sucks, especially when it sucks.
When I let my grief take up all the space of 1,000 oceans that were washing over me every day, I have to say, I felt joy. I felt joy, oh boy. I felt unexpected, unusual, surprising waves of joy.
Hello, hello, hello. It's Sonya Renee Taylor, and this is Mundane Miracles with Sonya Renee Taylor, the podcast where I collect evidence that life is indeed happening on purpose with radical love in service of our highest good, even when it sucks, especially when it sucks. I am glad to be back with you all this week. I am coming to you from a new location and an unmade bed in the gorgeous and magical land of Ecuador. You may or may not know, probably don't know, that I live part-time in Ecuador as part of a community that is like in present time building and creating called UFI, the Uncertain Futures Institute. And really, we are in the business of creating the world that we want to see today in real time. What is a just, compassionate, loving, spiritually oriented community built on the relationship between ancient indigenous wisdom traditions and the emergent and liberatory imaginations of us all? What does that look like? What does that look like for personal transformation? What does it look like for social transformation? And what does it look like for systems transformation? How do we build the new world in real time? Recognizing that the new world is also in part a return to what was. And so I'm super excited and delighted to be inside of this experience of building the new world in real time. And one of the land-based projects where I do that is in Ecuador. And so I'm here and it's beautiful. And I wish I could show you about the gorgeousness that is this land, but my laptop camera won't reverse. And it's deeply magical, really beautiful, powerful land. This week, I promised to you all from our last episode that I would tell the story of how I got kicked out of New Zealand. Yeah, and it really is quite a profound and beautiful experience, and still tender in a lot of ways. I want to start by saying, for those who don't know, I spent 5 years living in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Aotearoa is the indigenous Maori name, the Te Reo Maori, the language of the Maori, name for the colonized name New Zealand, which British colonizers turned it into New Zealand, but its indigenous name is Aotearoa. And I lived in Aotearoa for 5 years, from October of 2017 until April of 2022. And this is a tall order that I'm going to say to you as I am staring out of a massive picture window looking at endless coastlines and majestic mountains overlooking the ocean. Aotearoa is the prettiest place I've ever been to. It remains the most beautiful country I have ever laid my eyes on. And I have not laid my eyes on all the countries by any stretch of the imagination. I've not even laid my eyes on most countries, but I've laid my eyes on a fair amount of countries and land masses and regions. And Aotearoa is stunning. And I loved it there. I loved living there. I loved the community that I was building there. And I want to say that while not over romanticizing Aotearoa, which is a thing that happens. For folks who don't know, it's at the bottom. It's at the bottom of the world or the top of the world, depending on how you want to orient. It is the closest landmass to Antarctica, or what we know as the South Pole. It is comprised of 2 small islands that aren't really that small, but the population of Aotearoa is slightly under 5 million people in the whole country. And when I tell you that you can just energetically breathe a deep sigh of spaciousness when there are only 5 million people in a whole country, spread out over 2 islands, it's giving spaciousness, which is what I'm into. It's giving, I don't have to ask you to give me 5 feet because there's a lot of 5 feet between us. And I really love that. I really needed that. When I first went to Aotearoa, I was burnt out beyond belief. We were in the first Trump presidency, and I made the decision that I was leaving the country prior to Trump's election because I knew he was going to win. And I was like, I don't desire to hang out in that. Whatever that's about to be, I am far more suited to assist in it from some other location. Like, I need to actually be in a place where I have a regulated nervous system in order to add whatever my ashe is to this experience. And I was 100% right about that. I went to visit in November of 2016. I took myself for my 40th birthday and I spent a month there. My lifey, Denise Jolly, came along with me and we had this incredible time. And the first time that I got there, I had been introduced by a friend in the US. It was like, oh, I have a friend in New Zealand. And then I emailed that friend in New Zealand, and that friend in New Zealand was having a birthday party. And so then I went to the birthday party, and while I was at the birthday party, at the end of the night, this friend tells me about a fellowship program that's bringing social impact entrepreneurs to New Zealand to incubate social impact projects. At the time, The Body Is Not an Apology was indeed an up and running digital media and education platform designed to challenge social justice issues through the lens of radical self-love. I was like, I run a social impact organization. I'm a go. And so I asked to know more about this fellowship. I ended up meeting with the CEO of the fellowship on my last full day in New Zealand. And that began the journey of getting accepted into this fellowship and moving. The fellowship is a 3-year-long fellowship that offered at the end of it an option for permanent residency. So you could ultimately have permanent residency in New Zealand as a result of this project. And just to give you a really quick sort of timeline, right? So I was like, okay, I'm getting out of the United States. I had been to New Zealand for the first time in 2009 for a writers festival. I was brought there by my friend Penny Ashton, shout out Penny, who I had met on a poetry slam world tour in 2005. So she brought me back in 2009 for this writers festival. I fell in love. I thought this country was amazing. I thought that the indigenous community was beautiful and depthful and profound and still alive in a way that had been really suppressed in the United States around indigenous culture. Yeah, like there's a real dynamic of the nature of moving Native American people off of their land and onto reservations created the dynamic of deep invisibilization of Native communities in the United States. And there was a way in which the visibility of indigenous culture and Maori folks felt so much more visible and pronounced to me in Aotearoa than it ever had in the United States. That is not by accident. That was a very intentional act of erasure by the United States. And New Zealand is not perfect and has done whiteness gone white. colonization gonna colonize across spectrums. And so without question, similar dynamics of disenfranchisement and erasure have happened and are happening in Aotearoa, New Zealand, to the indigenous people of that land, the Maori community. And there's a way in which the sort of magnitude of it felt like it had not taken hold in the same way. And so I was really moved by how present indigenous culture was. In addition to the fact that the place is just beautiful. It's giving mountains, it's giving desert, it's giving volcanoes, it's giving lakes. You to go to the South Island, it's giving, forged. I don't even know how you pronounce that. FJORD, forged, massive waterways with giant jutting mountainscapes. It is incredible landscape. It's the first place that I went to and had a relationship with the land, a conscious relationship with the land. I think I've always had a relationship with the land. It just wasn't conscious. It wasn't intentional. I didn't know that's what I was having. But Aotearoa was the first place where the land called me in a very specific way. And so when I went back 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, what is that? Many years later. I don't do math, y'all. From 2009, when I went back in 2016, I was checking it out and my plan to leave the United States to see, like, was I really in love with this place or did they just treat me really nice at a festival and that's why I'm here? And I found myself just as in love. I found myself thinking it was just as beautiful and just as interesting and I was just as excited. And then this fellowship opportunity falls in my lap. And literally found out about it at the beginning of the month, had a meeting with the CEO about it at the end of the month of November, was invited back to speak at a conference in February of 2017, submitted my application in April, received my visa in July, or received my acceptance in June, received my visa in July, and moved all of my things October 21st of 2017. And so less than a year later, from the time I had heard about it, I had immigrated to New Zealand. And so much happened there. I know you all have heard, I've mentioned, if you follow me in any way or listen to other things I've talked about, I have mentioned the great collapse of 2020. And that happened in New Zealand. One day at some point, we'll have a longer conversation about that as well. But that's not the story I want to tell today. What I want to say is that it was very clear that I was supposed to be there. And it was very clear that I had work there to do. And it was very clear that much of my life as I had constructed it, desired to fall away. And it seemed to me that life desired me to have a soft place for that collapsing. It was like all the pieces are going to fall, Sonya, but they are going to fall on soft ground. They're going to fall on a ground that can hold you. They're going to fall in a way that you know you are held, not by the things you've constructed of your mind, but by the very land itself and all the ancestral energies that gathered to bring you here. That is where you're going to fall. And you're going to fall into the arms of Gaia, of Pachamama, of Mother Earth. And you're going to be held. And that's exactly what happened. I met incredible community and family. Shout out to my Black Creatives Aotearoa, BCA family, run by the estimable Dione Joseph Torres. I always got to work her Greek last name out. My sister from a different mama and a different mister, my Aotearoa Whānau, my family there, and my ABFF, my Aotearoa best friend forever, Kitarangi Cameron, is there, and the beautiful work that her mother started with the Center Tutama Wahine o Taranaki, which is our women of Taranaki. Beautiful Maori liberation, family healing organization in Taranaki, Aotearoa. I was so beautifully held by so many beautiful people while I was there. And the other truth is I was deeply and profoundly lonely at times. When I first moved there, the biggest question that I held at the time was, what does it mean to move to some place where no one loves you? And it was such a intense thing to hold. I was like, I'm going someplace where not only does no one know me, no one loves me here. And what does it mean? How do you live in a world where no one loves you? And what I was taught is, and what is sweet and beautiful, it feels so tender as I think about it. It's like, it's not possible to have the experience of no one loves you, because I am love, which means that everywhere I am, there love is. I cannot be absent from love. I cannot be separated from love. Love is not in some location with some person. Love is existence unto itself, which means every place existence encounters itself, there is love. The question is, do we know it? Can we see it? Will we open to it? And what I got to experience was first the deep and profound practice of self-love, of radical self-love. So much of what I went to New Zealand to do was to learn to know that I was the thing I was looking for, that I was the love, right? That it was first me. And then the other thing I came to see is that, like, it's everywhere. And once I can see it, it's everywhere. I see it in everything. And I left there knowing I'm deeply and profoundly loved, because I am deeply and profoundly love. Here's the other thing that's true about me, and I think I've mentioned this to you all before. We'll talk a little astrology for a second. The nodes in astrology, the North Node and the South Node in Vedic astrology, are referred to as Rahu and Ketu, and they often describe what they call the head of the dragon and the tail of the dragon. And astrologically, they are here to describe the lessons our soul came to really work on in this lifetime, or to work on as we age. If you are not in the cosmology of other lifetimes, then there can be like what you came here with a natural aptitude for that feels very comfortable for you. And then the thing that stretches you, the thing that feels uncomfortable, but is calling you into greater embodiment of it, a greater practicing of it, a greater integration or unification of that energy. That's the North Node. The North Node, head of the dragon, and what you are taking in this lifetime, what you are still gathering nourishment from, which means you have to take it in, right? And then there is the South Node, the tail of the dragon, which is that which you have already gathered all of the nourishment from. And so you can leave it. So it can leave your body. So it can be released because you've taken everything you can take from it. And so my North Node is in Scorpio, like everything else in my chart, like 5 other placements in my chart. And my South Node is in Taurus. And my South Node is in Taurus, and it is conjunct. Conjunct means the 2 planets are real close together or on top of each other. My South Node is conjunct Jupiter, the planet of expansion, the planet that makes everything bigger. And it's in the 5th house, which is the house of creativity and our creative endeavors and play and what we make, what we create, right? In the sign of Taurus. South Node is in Taurus, conjunct Jupiter in the 5th house. What that means, the translation is, I want it comfortable. I want it lush and pretty. Taurus is ruled by Venus, the planet of beauty and love and the feminine and what we value. I want it pretty. I want it lush. I want it comfortable. I want a lot of pretty, lush comfort. In my first episode where I talked about I just want some cashmere socks and cashmere blanket, shout out to my friend Olivia who bought me some cashmere socks. So I have cashmere socks, y'all. Now I have some. That's what I want. I want comfort. I want ease. I want beauty. And I want to create comfort, ease, and beauty in the world for myself, right? That's what I want to do. It's not what I'm here to do. But New Zealand is comfortable. It's lush. It's beautiful. There ain't a lot of people. It doesn't bring a lot of stress. Externally, that is. And internally, the distance, the circumstances of living so far away. It's a 13-hour flight from Los Angeles. If you're coming from the East Coast, you got to add another 6 hours on top of that. It is far away. And I tell people that when I went to New Zealand, I moved to an island, off an island at the bottom of the world. an island off an island at the bottom of the world. And then up 40 flights of stairs because my first house was on an island, 40 minutes off of the major city, Auckland, and then up 40 flights of stairs. It was a serious situation. And so I really went far, far, far away. And while the external world was comfortable, it brought a tremendous amount of internal upheaval, which I needed, right? I needed that tension because as much as I want comfort and beauty, I'm here for transformation. And so what happens for me is anytime I'm too comfortable, other aspects of my chart get activated. Typically Uranus, the planet of liberation through shock, surprise, and upheaval, which is also where in Scorpio, conjunct my sun. Anytime I get too comfy in my situation, then Uranus is like, great, it's time to shake her up. So I was very internally shaken up. And when I left New Zealand in 2020, on the first sort of leg of my big spiritual journey, I figured I was going back. I did not yet have my permanent residency. And so I had a lot of fear that they weren't going to let me back in. You know, I spent a lot of time talking mad trash on the internet. Talking a lot about white supremacist delusion, talking a lot about racism, talking a lot about capitalism, talking a lot about systems and structures that needed to collapse. And I was like, I don't know if this puts me at risk for not getting my permanent residency approved. And so in February of 2021, my permanent residency was approved and I went back to New Zealand. So I move back to Aotearoa in February of 2021. And when I moved back, I moved into this sprawling home. One of the plans that I had before I'd gone, during the Great Collapse, I was supposed to be holding retreats, radical self-love healing retreats in my home. And then the Great Collapse happened and COVID happened and my life fell apart as I understood it. And I was like, oh, stop trying to heal other people in your home. Your job is to heal you. Like that's, it got very clear. It was like, oh, I keep trying to do all this healing work for everybody else and that's not the assignment. And so then I was like, great, well then what do I want and where do I want to heal? And so I ended up renting a house on 3 acres, a gated property up a winding road. It had like birch tree canopies and rose maze-like courtyard and a pond and giant magnolia trees and a fig grove and massive calla lilies grew there and a ginormous pine tree in the backyard and orange trees and grapefruit trees and persimmon trees and quinces. I had never even had a quince until a quince grew on my property, and a little bridge that went over a stream, and then a separate house that was like my office work house. I mean, it was absurd. I was living in an incredible house that it's sad none of the people in my life from the States ever got to see this house because I moved there, and what I spoke into existence was exactly what happened, which was like, you're supposed to heal. Stop trying to heal other people in your house and you heal. And so, of course, as soon as I went back, we went into several rounds of lockdowns for COVID. And, you know, New Zealand had extremely strict lockdowns, like nothing like, you know, people was over here ordering takeout delivery in the United States. Nothing. The grocery stores were open and the grocery stores were open. That was it. Literally, you could go buy groceries. You could stop and get gas, but not even contact, right? And that was all you could do. It was completely shut down. And all of a sudden, I was launched into massive isolation on 3 acres of property, 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, plus an additional 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, upstairs, downstairs house that was my office. A full-on separate life, a full-on life all by myself, just alone, having these wild experiences. And I was in that house for a year, just 1 year, but it was a year of a lot of deep isolation, a lot of deep soul searching and aloneness and uncertainty about what was unfolding in my life. And also at the same time, a particular level of externalized comfort in some ways. I, had the bedroom of my dreams with plush velvet headboard and a black vanity set and rugs and chaise lounges, and it was gorgeous. I decorated the shit out of this house. I was living good low so, as they say. It was great. And I was in deep isolation. And one of the things that I developed during that time, well, I had already developed it. I was still in the practice of a very intentional daily spiritual practice. I had a spirit room. At the time, I would do tarot readings. I was getting deeper into my study of astrology. All sorts of things were happening during this time. And then it was time for me to leave. It was approaching the end of my lease. And I had had challenges with my landlord. I had had challenges with my landlord navigating the people who owned the house, who didn't want to do any of the work, just not on top of their stuff. And if you all recall from other episodes, home can be a place of challenge in my life, certainly a place of challenge in my birth chart. And I was feeling the tensions of living in this home with people who didn't want to take care of it, and far away and inside of isolation and all this other stuff. And so it was time to get ready and leave. And my plan was just to move to a different house, right? I knew I needed to come back to the States. I had like 4 weeks worth of speaking engagements in the United States. And so I thought that I was just going to go do my speaking engagement and move into my next place. I was like, oh, cool. Well, I'll just put my stuff in storage, and then I will, find a place when I get back, or, maybe look for a place now and move my stuff in when I get back. And I went to bed one night and I dreamt that I put all my things in storage and that the storage unit caught on fire. And I was like, that's dramatic. Why is my storage unit on fire? And then when I sat down in my spirit room and I sat down to my practice, and I heard, there's something you're holding on to that you need to let go of. And when I pulled my tarot cards, it was a very clear message that there were things I needed to let go of. And I was like, okay, I'm down to let go of stuff. Like, you don't have to yell. What's the issue? And so I said, okay, well, let me have like a little garage sale where I can give some things away. And I realized, I was like, well, I don't need to do a garage sale, but I do have stuff that I can give away. Here's what you need to know. Every place that I have ever lived in since high school, probably. Yep, this is the truth. Every home I've lived in since high school, all the things in it were given away to someone else. When I left for college, I lived in a group home with other girls, and well, I didn't give anything away because I didn't actually have my own space then. But I had a roommate in college, the first house I had in college. I had a roommate, and I moved out and left my things there. And she and her boyfriend squatted in the house, didn't pay the rent, and just took all the stuff that I left. Then I moved in Washington, D.C. in my early 20s, right as I became a performance poet. I knew that I needed to lessen my overhead. And so I was like, great, I can't be on the road as a poet. I'm making $50 a night and still hold this apartment, so I should probably sublet my apartment. So I sublet my apartment to my friend Delrika Andrews, who I believe might still live in this apartment to this day. Is highly possible. I sublet this studio apartment that I had in Washington, D.C. to her with everything in it. And needless to say, that was the end of those things. They went to Delrika, and Delrika started a new home. When I got a house, I lived with other people. When I moved to Los Angeles, I lived with some other people. But when I moved back to DC, I had a house, but I moved all of those things into a house with roommates. And so my roommates got all my things. And then a significant amount of my belongings were left to my roommates when I moved to California. And then the last house that I lived in before I moved to New Zealand, I sublet the house to someone. And there was supposed to be an arrangement for them to pay me over time for all the things that I left. Never happened. They just got the house and all the things in it. And so there was a pattern of me sort of giving away my home and its belongings for a long time. For most of my life, there was a pattern of that. But I had never noticed it, right? And in part, perhaps I never noticed it because I never had really nice shit. I never had shit I was worried about giving away until this particular phase of my life where I'm living on 3 acres in a sprawling, 3,000 square foot home with 4 bedrooms and 2 living rooms and all kinds of stuff, right? 7 beds. Remember, I also had all the things that I had bought to host these retreats. So I had massive amounts of furniture because I had bought this furniture to host these retreats that never happened. So I go to set up my day of giving away things, right? My little garage giveaway is the better way to say it. And that morning, at my garage giveaway, I go sit down at my altar to do my morning practice before. And as soon as I sit down, I hear the message, whatever anyone asks for, you are to release. And I was like, immediately I was like, release what? I mean, I'm giving away stuff. Like, I don't understand. But I heard it. And I heard it in that way that felt like the other messages, right? That felt like maybe it was a month earlier that I had received the message to go vegan. So I already was hearing specific messages. So this day, I get ready. My friend Dione comes over and I tell her that I got this message. And she's like, oh no, like, is there some stuff that you want me to like take to my house and hide so that no one takes it? I was like, I have a feeling that's not actually what I'm supposed to do. So maybe no, but thank you. Ride or die. Good friend. And so no one shows up. Nobody shows up to my garage giveaway. So I have all this stuff and nobody shows up. And I'm like, yay! I just had to be willing. I don't know if this sounds familiar from a previous episode where I really thought that like just saying yes to the assignment meant that that was all I had to do. But that's definitely what I thought. Like, oh, I just had to be willing. Hooray. Not how that worked. Hey, you, hey, you, hey, you, hey, you, hey, you, hey, you, so I still have all this stuff. I tell my friend, bro, about this message, right? That I was told that anything anyone asks for, I'm to release. And she's like, no one's going to do that. So the thing you should know is that the culture in New Zealand is a very reserved culture. It is very inward facing culture. They have this thing called tall poppy syndrome, which is like no one is supposed to stand out too much, right? Like no one is, which, I went there as a big black bald woman. So obviously I was not interested in following along so much with tall poppy syndrome, but it's not a nation of showiness. And so the idea that someone would come to your home and take things, like just take things, was absurd. She's from the US but had been in New Zealand for like 20 years, for a long time. And so she just found it really like that's an absurd notion. No one here would do that. And I was like, well, luckily for me, no one had to because no one showed up. But I still have all these things I need to give away. So can you help arrange some folks to come by and, pick up these really good things? I've got great shoes. I've got, like I had cute stuff. I wasn't trying to throw things away. I was like, right, I have a feeling that this is useful for someone. So can we find a way to get it to them? So bro agrees to arrange to have some folks come over. Throughout the next week during my practice, I keep getting the same message. You have stuff you need to give away, Sonya. You have stuff you need to give away, Sonya. You have stuff you need to give away. There's stuff you're holding on to that you need to release. I start getting this sense of like, I'm supposed to give away more than just the things that I was planning on giving away. And I'm definitely feeling some resistance to it, but I'm like, okay, well, I literally asked Spirit and my guides, I said, can I sell it? And the immediate reply I heard was, do you need the money? And the truth of the matter was, at that time, I did not need the money. I had lots of thriving business ventures. And so I was like, okay, well, I don't need the money. So that's not happening. And so once I realized that I couldn't sell it, then I just started saying, okay, well, what am I willing to release? I had things that I had bought with my ex partner that felt very much like they were tied to that relationship. So I was like, oh, I'm willing to release these. And then I was like, right, I have these beds from this retreat that I didn't have. I don't need all these beds. I'm willing to release those. And so I found a website called Free Cycle where you could just give away things for free. And I decided to put some of this stuff on Free Cycle. And I was like, okay, I'm downsizing. Like wherever I move to, I don't need 2 living rooms worth of stuff. I don't need whatever. So I found myself softening into giving away some things. And I got on Free Cycle and I posted these things and I said to myself, the first name that sounds like a Maori name is the person I'll respond to. And the first name that came up was a person named Aroha. Aroha in Te Reo Maori means love. And so the first person was a woman whose name meant love, who replied and said, yes, I would love to take these beds. I think it was the beds that I first put up. As she prepared to arrive to come and get the beds, I got the same message that I got the day that I was supposed to have my garage giveaway, which was anything anyone asks for, you are to release. And so Araha arrives at my house, and I learn that she is the mother of 10 children and that her eldest has just moved out and needs bed. And I immediately like, oh, right. Your job is to be generous here. And so I tell her, well, I'm actually been instructed to give away anything that anyone asks for. And she's like, really? And I was like, yes. And so then she's like, well, she starts asking for things in a way that I was kind of unprepared for. But they were also things that were sort of custom made to the house. In New Zealand, you have to buy your own appliances. So I told Aroha that she could have the washer and dryer. I had 4 twin beds, like really cushy, awesome beds. She took all the beds. I had a living room sofa that she took, and coffee tables and end tables she took. I had some rugs that I had just bought 2 months earlier. And she was like, are these rugs available? I said yes. And what I thought was fascinating was, right, that it would require someone who had the kind of need that this woman had as a single mother with 10 kids. It was clear that she needed, that I had overflow that she could utilize. And so it felt easy in some ways to say yes to her. And even when she asked me for things that I was unprepared for, like, hey, are you giving away that TV? My 60-inch television on my wall. I knew that I had been given a clear instruction, which is anything anyone asks for, you are to release. And so she asked. And so I said yes. So she was supposed to come back on Saturday and get the remaining items because she didn't have enough room in her van to take all the things. So that Saturday arrives. Remember, my friend Bro was telling other people to come and get my garage giveaway items that I had planned. So that morning, I wake up. It's Saturday again. I sit down at my altar and I get the same message that I got before. Anything anyone asks for, you are to release. And this time, I know it's real. I thought that I had lucked up and maybe like was not going to have to, like, I just needed to be willing and now I wasn't going to have to do it. And that was not what was happening. And I knew that each person who came into my house that day, I needed to share with them the message that I was told and then release. And so the first woman who showed up was a Black woman who was also from the United States who had immigrated to New Zealand. So I shared with her initially, I said, anything anyone asks for, I am to release. Everything is available in this house if you ask for it. She looked like completely kind of flabbergasted. And then she was like, are you serious? And I was like, I'm serious. And when I tell you that she proceeded, she proceeded to take all kinds of shit I was not prepared for. She was like, is the robo vacuum is available? And I was like, yeah, I guess it is. I had these great matching. I don't know if you all are familiar with this brand. It's called Smeg, very high end appliance brand. And I had a Smeg toaster and a Smeg water kettle. I have never in my life paid more money for a toaster and a water kettle. In my whole life, I paid a lot of money. And when I tell you, she was like, is the toaster available? And I felt a little part of my heart just break. Yeah. And this is what's funny is, y'all, I was sad. She proceeded to move through my house and ask me for things that I never thought about giving away. Is this vanity set in your bedroom available? Is the chaise lounge in your bedroom available? I was like, oh my God. And I sat there and I had my friend Linda sitting with me. And I sat there and I cried. I cried as this woman walked through my home and asked for things. Later on, she told me, just maybe like a half an hour after she had arrived, she started sharing with me that she had been directed by spirit to move, that like she needed to live near the water in order to do the healing work that she needed to do. And she said that she had been saying to spirit, like, but I don't have the resources. Like, I don't have the ability to do this. And spirit told her, just do as I say. And so she moved on it, went that week, looked at a place, found a place that somehow miraculously all the financial stuff worked out for it exactly. But she was like, I don't have anything to put in it. And then Bro came to her and told her that I was having this house giveaway. And so I ended up furnishing this new house that this Black woman who also had immigrated had been instructed by spirit to move into. And so I still was moving through a lot of energy of like resistance around this. And then a second group of folks came. It was a group of 5 young women. They must have been between like, I don't know, 25 and 34. There was a Black woman, a Maori woman, I believe a Pacific Islander, Tongan or Samoan, and I'm not totally sure. Forgive me. So it's just these women of color, big bodies, large, glorious young women. And one of them I knew was a supporter and fan of my work. And she did not know that her friend was bringing her to my house. So she arrives and she's just like delighted and beaming because she is, at my house and didn't know that that was what was happening. And these women arrive at the door and I say to them, now, mind you, like pulling up to my house is a thing. You got to go through a gate and a windy road and, orchards and a pond. And then you pull up to my house and then you get out and then you knock on my door. And then I say to them, welcome. Thank you for coming. Everything in this house is available. And anything you ask for, you can have anything that it is you ask for. And I see their eyes get massive, like saucers, and they cannot believe what it is I'm telling them. And they're like, are you serious? And I'm like, yes, anything you ask for, you can have. And all of a sudden, what was my assignment wasn't just my assignment anymore. It was my assignment to release and to be willing to release, but it was their assignment to be willing to receive, to say, I can ask for something and actually have it. Right? Again, in this nation where people are not supposed to stand out or not supposed to ask for too much or not supposed to be, like all of these things you're not supposed to be. Here is this person saying, you can ask for what you want and you can have it. In this fabulous home full of fabulous things and fabulous clothes, because most of these young women, were like of my size or, definitely could fit into my clothes. And when I tell you that it was like watching the kids in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, they were in my closet trying on my dresses and trying on my earrings and trying on my purses and my shoes, looking at my plants. I had a massive book collection, massive book collection, 2 giant bookshelves worth of Black feminist fiction, Black feminist nonfiction, massive poetry, social justice, capitalism, political science, spirituality, you name it. Watching people pull Octavia Butler and Toni Morrison off the shelves and Lucille Clifton and Audre Lorde off the shelves and Alauda and Rumi and Paulo Coelho and just it was like watching people in their own little dream. And all of a sudden, this sadness that I felt like utter delight. Felt like complete and total joy. And I was elated, ecstatic to watch these things be rehomed. And the next day, a different group of women showed up. And it was interesting. There was a person in that group whose energy felt like it was the energy of scarcity, which makes you be greedy, that makes you like be like, how much can I get? How much can I take? And I felt that energy from them. And I also knew there was nothing for me to do about it, that it wasn't my job to do anything, that it was my job to allow it to unfold and to allow that person to have whatever experience they were having in the process. In my bedroom at the time, I had a big, giant black velvet throne because I am me and have always been me. So I had a giant black velvet throne in my bedroom. And I also had a customized pink velvet couch and oversized chair that I had custom made, that I had just received in August of 2021 is when my couch came. I hadn't even had it for a year, y'all. I didn't even have this couch for a full year. I was hoping that maybe I'd get to keep the throne in the couch. I thought maybe I'd get to keep the throne in the couch. And I did not get to keep the throne in the couch. After I had given away all the things and the women had come, it was clear it was like everything. That was the next message, was everything. Let it all go. And I heard very clearly, you can't take your old life into your new one. And somehow I still thought I was coming back. But I was like, right, my old life into my new one. Okay, my old life is this stuff and the plans that I had with this stuff. And that's not happening anymore. And so it's okay. I can let these things go. By the time it was all said and done, I had given away everything except for my mother's wedding dress and her china, an armoire, a jewelry box that she had. So a box of my mother's things and some keepsakes from my youth, just a few of them though. And a large suitcase and a duffel bag worth of clothing. Everything else. I had a giant walk-in closet filled to the brim with clothing. I had so much jewelry. I had 55 pair of sunglasses. I had 80 pair of shoes. Like everything was gone. And whatever remained, I put on free cycle. And another young Maori woman came with her boyfriend and backed up to my garage and took all the rest of it. And so the only thing I had left was what I was traveling with and my dog, Baldwin James. I had arranged, like I said, I thought I was going on tour for 4 weeks and I was coming back. So I had arranged for a kennel for Baldwin to stay in. And then I had a friend who was going to keep him while I was gone. So that would cover like 2 weeks in the kennel, 3 weeks with my friend, and then I'd come back. And every time I tried to look for a place to live, it just fell through. And I just was like, okay, well, I don't know what's happening, but all right. I come to the United States to do these speaking engagements. And then I'm sent on a whole nother journey. And what I need you all to know is I've not been back to New Zealand since then. I've not been back to New Zealand since I left. The last picture I took was me kissing my dog goodbye and my friend Katerina and getting on the plane. And, Baldwin, my beloved Airedale Terrier, I had such sorrow when I realized I received the same message. It was like everything, Sonya. And I knew that it meant my dog too. And when I left, I didn't know that it meant my dog. I was like, clearly it couldn't mean my dog. I love my dog. I'll just move my dog here. And it was like, no. And then I thought, oh, well, I'll give my dog to my friends because they love him and they used to house sit for him. And it was like, no. And it was such an example of life being like, you don't get to control this. Your job is to let it go, to all let it go. And I had a friend, my friend Linda, who was with me the day I began giving away all my things in my home, had found someone to sort of foster Baldwin while I was away and to keep him for a while. And I guess I'd been back for 2 months when I realized that I could not keep Baldwin. And this awesome woman, Caitlin Craggy, had agreed to foster him. I came back to the States. I left in April. And by September, October, I knew that my job was to rehome Baldwin. And I asked Caitlin if they would be willing to adopt him. And, after thinking about it a little bit, they said yes. And the first picture that Caitlin sent me of Baldwin, he is running down a path, like there's some sort of like park path with green grass all around him. He has a giant stick in his mouth and a massive rainbow shooting out behind him. And I saw that picture and I just knew that I had done exactly what I was supposed to do. And I got energetically kicked out of Aotearoa. And today, like again, there was so much in that journey that was so confusing. It was always clear. I just didn't like what I was seeing, right? It was clear that I was like to release this life that I had constructed there. And I felt devastated by it because I didn't want to, because it was comfortable and beautiful and gorgeous. And again, it was such a clear message. Your new life is going to cost you your old one. And all the things that I was holding on to that were a part of the story of Aotearoa needed to be released, needed to be let go of. And I needed to be willing to let it fall away. And so much revealed itself to me. I began a journey over that next year that took me to Peru and took me to Colombia and took me to Ecuador and took me to Morocco and took me to Costa Rica and took me to Greece and took me to Senegal. It took me all over the world. I didn't know I was leaving my things behind because I was beginning a journey to travel the world. I didn't know that each of those locations had unique lessons for me, and that some of the most powerful and pivotal relationships of my life would come from my willingness to leave Aotearoa behind and to say yes to the next chapter. I couldn't have known that then, but my job was to just be obedient to spirit. And as usual, in my obedience to spirit, miraculous things occurred. Things I could not have ever imagined. I would not have written them myself. My spiritual husband, Teku, already says, you can't make this shit up. I couldn't make this up. It had to reveal itself to me. And had spirit said, because I'm going to take you around the world and introduce you to your soul family, and you're going to meet your spiritual husband, and you're going to have a relationship with all of these beautiful, gorgeous human beings, and you're going to practice expansive love. And like, I would not have been able to conceive or take in any of that. I had to live it. And living it required being a yes in the moment to what it was that life was asking me to lay on the altar of possibility, such that something else might arise. And so, as it stands right now, I have an invitation to return to Aotearoa in November of 2025. I imagine I will be celebrating my 49th birthday in Aotearoa, and I will be co-starring in a play, in my first theatrical appearance, should this happen, my first stage play, probably in over 25 years. And so it seems that perhaps my relationship with Aotearoa is not done. It is just waiting for its next chapter. But in order for that chapter to arrive, the other chapter had to end. I hope that you will willingly allow whatever it is that needs to be surrendered from your old life to be surrendered so that you can move powerfully into your new life. Your new life is going to cost you your old one. But I just want to be here to remind you that it's absolutely worth the price of the ticket. It's 100% worth the price of the ticket, even when it feels utterly confusing and painful. And I hope that you'll go powerfully into the new lesson, into the new event horizon that is calling your name. There are miracles there in the mundane. I hope you all have an amazing next 2 weeks. May it be precious. May it reveal gorgeous, beautiful things to you. I invite you to keep listening, to make it a ritual, to subscribe, to comment, to share. Please, I invite you to ask 3 other people, are you listening to Mundane Miracles with Sonya Renee Taylor? And help other people tap into the miraculous aspects of their own lives. And join me again each and every time that I share in this process of collecting evidence that life is indeed happening on purpose with radical love and service of our highest good, even when it sucks, especially when it sucks. Love you all. Bye.
You think you are dying, but you are being born.
Mundane Miracles with Sonya Renee Taylor is produced by Sonya Renee Taylor, edited by Dr. Shannon Weber. Our opening music is Joy and Grief by Sean and Abigail Bingson of the Bingsons. Our closing song is Dying by the Bingsons. Join us in the ritual of collecting evidence by rating, commenting, and subscribing to Mundane Miracles on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can get early access to episodes and support our radical love work by becoming a member on Patreon at patreon.com/Sonya Renee Taylor. That's patreon.com/Sonya Renee Taylor.